Welcome to Storytime Dark. It is our goal to bring you the creepiest, spookiest, and most thrilling stories from around the world. We have 4 more scary camping stories lined up. If you enjoy this video or this type of content, please drop us a like or subscribe and really help the channel out. My name is Dale and I will be your robotic narrator for this trip. Here we go. Went on a group camping trip in the middle of nowhere, Arizona, only to awake and hear something sniffing the outside of our tent. My immediate reaction was that it was likely a bear or some animal that came across our site, and just maybe my dumb friends didn't tie up the garbage. Seconds later, I can hear the sniffing go to the tent next to ours, and everyone in mine grabs one another quietly to acknowledge we all were awake and were aware of what's happening outside. Moments later, a friend in another tent popped out and started to scream and make noise. He had a gun too, hoping it would scare off whatever animal was in our sight. Turns out, it wasn't an animal. It was some guy who had gone through our cooler's food and also decided it'd be okay to sniff our tents. Our friend chased him off and we immediately packed our shit and left. Alright. A year after the above incident, my dumb friends and I went back to the nearby area, thinking what we encountered was a one-time incident. This time, we thought we'd outsmart any possible creepers, and instead of camping in our tents, we all slept in the beds of our trucks and SUVs. 'Cause they can't possibly sniff a Toyota Tacoma. Anyways, it's the middle of the night. I'm passed out in the back of my SUV when I suddenly feel a bright light on my face. Naturally, I would have woken up, cussed and asked who was doing that. However, I instantly knew to pretend to be asleep and not let the individual know I was awake. I laid there next to my girlfriend, hoping she would do the same as I, and I kept an ear out for any unusual sounds, like sniffing. All I could hear was a friend snoring by the campfire. After the light left my car, I heard the person walk to the next truck and shine his light on my friends in there. I slowly looked up, and it ended up being some older guy, just standing there staring at everyone while they slept. I waited until he left the campsite, and I busted my ass out of that truck and woke up my friends, most of which had also been pretending to sleep, and realized what was going on. TL. Drive. Don't camp outside of Tucson, Arizona unless you want a hill of eyes creature sniffing and staring at you while you sleep. So, not me, but my brother took my dog for a walk in the woods one night. We live on a farm in UK, and the woods start about 15 meters from our front door. Around 10 p.m. my brother returns saying he's lost the dog. Great. He immediately explained to me that his phone died in the middle of the woods and he had the dog, Chester, right by his side. As he looked down, a circular beam of light surrounded his feet for a split second before it shot off in one direction. The dog was completely gone. So after he hurried back home to get me, I went out into the woods to find him, and about a 20-second walk into the darkness I find Chester behind a big tree. The weirdest part was he did not seem his usual self. He was walking a snail's pace with his tail between his legs. He's ran around these woods on his own at night most of his life with no fear, but this time he was almost trembling. He walked past me into the house and lay down on his bed, and that was it. When I was a kid around 8 or 9, my mom, grandma, brothers and I went camping at a small camping about 2 hours from the town we lived in. We went there a lot and even had a particular campsite we had slowly built up over the years. On this particular trip we had my aunt and uncle's dogs with us since they were doing military tours. They were both well-trained bird dogs, but usually really calm and friendly. The first night on this particular trip, and Star starts growling in the tent at about 1 in the morning. My mom, thinking something is outside, arms herself and investigates with the dogs. As she gets out the tent, Star and Ariel would not let her move to the other edge of the campsite, and both get into attack position, while herding my mom towards the car. This is while also keeping themselves in front of the tent. By this point we are all up and with a group of kids under 10 freaking out. For a reason she can't even explain today, my mother packs up camp and gets us all into the car to head home. After about 10 minutes out of the campsite, a car starts following us and the dogs get in the back and just growl. By this point everyone was in borderline panic mode, and my brothers were crying the entire car ride home. As the town came into view, you have to cross a huge bridge to drive in, and the car was still following us. And as a kid you make stories to yourself that nothing is wrong and the car behind you is just full of scared people too. Yet as we start to cross the bridge, the car stops and just turns around, speeding back the way we came. We stopped at a gas station and everyone was near meltdown mode, and my mom goes in to get cigarettes, but Star would not let her back into the car until she could see her clearly. This and a camping trip a few years later convinced me camping is no longer my thing. This will get buried, but I have never gone camping or out into the woods at night after this trip. A few friends and I had a long weekend, 5 days off from school, and we decided to go camping in the North Georgia mountains. We packed a big 10-person tent. There were 5 of us, 2 guys, 3 girls, and loaded up my buddy's truck. He and I had some experience being outdoors camping, hiking, hunting, and he's an army vet, so we packed really well and had all sorts of amenities like a propane stove, grill, fold-up cots, portable shower. We were in IT for the whole weekend. We left Wednesday afternoon and parked the truck in a small town and started hiking into the woods to find a spot. It was a fairly normal hike until we got about 4 to 5 miles in. The first time we noticed something strange was when we came into a little clearing in the woods with a big pond, tiny lake in it. We stepped into the open area and everything stopped. No birds chirping, no squirrels running around, even the clouds and wind seemed to stop moving. My buddy and I both thought, well shoot, there's gotta be a predator nearby, and took out our handguns. It's the law in Kennesaw, just in case. I've never seen a bear in Georgia, so we figured it was a mountain lion or maybe some coyotes. My friend and I were looking around the edge of the clearing and he grabbed me. He nodded across the water, and when I looked I saw what seemed to be a woman standing just at the tree line. She was maybe 150 yards away. We assumed she must live somewhere nearby, and so we continued walking past the water and clearing. As we headed back into the woods, I looked over my shoulder at where she was standing, but she was gone. The sounds of the forest returned once we got into the trees. We made a campsite about 2 miles past that as it was getting late, and we didn't want to be stuck building camp in the dark. We got everything unpacked and set up and built a fire. Popped a couple beers and sat down to hang out. There was a girl I was interested in on the trip, and we had been flirting, so after a few beers and the sun was down, we snuck away from the fire under the pretense that she wanted help setting up part of the tent. We started fooling around, and after a few minutes she stopped and looked at me funny. I asked what was wrong and she said nothing. It just got really quiet. We both quickly dressed and headed back outside to the fire. The others hadn't noticed anything strange and didn't mention anything wrong, except joking with us that it took us a long time to fix the tent. On the first morning we found that the propane stove had been turned on but not ignited and had gone empty overnight. None of us had used it. The second morning we noticed some things had gone missing. A lantern we left outside by the fire was gone. My crush's sweatshirt she left on a little folding chair stool. We figured we just misplaced things, or someone had used them and put them somewhere else. During the second full day, Friday, we were looking for a waterfall that we read online was in the area. We were following the river upstream when everything went silent again. My buddy nudged me while we were walking and indicated up to the top of a hill next to the river. I looked up through the trees and was just able to make out the figure of the same woman. Same clothes and all. Just standing. I couldn't tell if she was looking at us or not, but she was just standing there. My buddy told the girls he thought he saw a mountain lion following us and was gonna go scare it off. He hustled up the hill making a lot of noise and came back about 10 minutes later. He said he scared it off to the girls, but told me aside that the woman wasn't there when he got up there. We hiked back to camp and found it a mess. It wasn't totally trashed, but it was clear something had gotten into our stuff. We told the girls it was probably raccoons. We both took our guns to bed with us. That night stuff went sideways. I remember waking up because my crush was squeezing my arm. We had been sleeping cuddled up together. I opened my eyes and she hushed me before I could ask what was wrong. There was complete silence all around the tent. I looked across the tent and my buddy was sitting halfway up looking around. We both stayed awake for the next 2-ish hours until the sun started coming up and then packed our stuff and we all headed out. The entire hike back into town was eerily silent. There were a couple points I thought I saw the woman through the trees, but never got a clear sight of her. We avoided the lake completely and got back to the truck in what seemed like half the time it took to get out to the camp. After we were safely on the road back home, the girls and my buddy all started to tell everyone about moments they thought they saw the woman all weekend, but were too freaked out to mention it out loud, like she would go away if we ignored her. The wild part was none of us could describe her face. It's almost like it was blurry. No idea who she was, but I've never been camping or hiking at night since. Well, that is all for now. If you enjoyed these stories or want to see even more content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time. Dale.